finding out and speaking his truth and putting facts in the ground. And he's been on various podcasts, such as with Glenn Deese and many others. He's very well known in these circles to have a very balanced opinion. And it's an honor to have you here this morning, Patrik. Thank you so much. How are you today?
Thank you for having me here. I'm okay. And
Well, very good. So, Mr. Patrik, you've had a very long, illustrious career. One of the first questions that comes to my mind today is what initially drew you to a path in journalism that often diverges, let's say, from mainstream media narratives?
so it's deeply rooted in my youth. The whole show began half a century ago in Southwest Germany with a small magazine called Province Magazine. And this was a paper of the so-called alternative press in Germany against the mainstream media. We opposed the local real estate mafia in
Mm-hmm.
Southwest Germany. And well, we published every month 800 copies. And we thought we would have any influence, but we had nothing. It was just a very beginning and well, very unprofessional when I'm thinking over on these days. But this was the beginning. I began in the alternative press against the mainstream media. And later on, during my studying time, I worked for um, magazines of political science and literature. And then I made my first internships at public broadcasters in Frankfurt and Saarbrücken. And later on, I got a longer internship, and this was the very beginning. Yes, I was always in a role to oppose the power elites, and for years I could do that as an employee of public broadcasters. But today this is over because public broadcaster transformed themselves
Mm-hmm.
from a journalistic tool to a propaganda machine of the NATO.
And you saw this evolution early in your career, or did that happen over a slow pace of time?
So in public broadcasters, we always had discussions, hard discussions,
Mm-hmm.
but we had a clear understanding that it was important for a public broadcaster to present different point of views.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that this guy was a conservative and I was more a lefty, and everybody knows this from
Mm-hmm.
everybody. We laughed about that. Um, but it transformed step by step. I want to give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
In the year 1997, I moved to North Germany because North German public broadcaster in Kiel offered me a position as a political editor.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years later, the decisions were not made at the editorial conference in the morning anymore. So they organized the so-called pre-conference with the heads of the departments. And they made the decisions right before the beginning of the editorial conference. And at the editorial conference, the freelancers were given the topics. You have to do that, and you have to do this, and all that. And so the conference changed from a meeting of making democratic decisions to a meeting of giving out orders. And this is one example what changed in this process. The background was they didn't want to have so many political topics in the magazines, in the TV magazines. They wanted to open the magazines for more um, for a more softer approach. And the the editors opposed that. That was
Mm.
the reason. And they tried to transform against the will of the editors. That was the background. It's just one example of that what
Mm.
happened right now. And I experienced this transformation from a democratic, organized broadcaster to a transmission belt of the power elites for more than 40 years. And the
Wow.
situation got worse and worse. And in the end of the show, the public broadcaster today are mostly instruments of NATO propaganda.
Wow. So this is indeed a very tragic reality. Indeed, I see that in Belgium. As you probably know, I live in Belgium, not very far from Brussels. In case of a real shootout, we are target number one, as they say. But all jokes aside, the reality is indeed we've seen this shift in the US, in Europe. Um, so could you elaborate on the primary mechanisms by which you believe public media broadcasters, especially lately, steer public opinion towards this conflict today? Because I'll give you an example. Right, just a day or two, 3 days into the war starting, we had article after article that claiming that Russia was running out of missiles and weapons. I mean, literally third day into the war, they were screaming, "Oh, it's over for them. They don't have any ammunition." Um, what are these mechanisms that these tools that they use to drive this opinion towards the conflict? In your opinion?
This war in Ukraine did not start with the Russian invasion on February 24, 2022.
Correct.
This war started with the Western organized coup on the Maidan in February 2014. And with the Russian invasion began the second phase of this war, which
Correct.
started very early. And every media, every mainstream media completely followed the NATO propaganda narratives up from this day. And this means that the broadcasting and the covering of the media was organized by a supranational institution. And this institution was the NATO and the NATO states. They organized with their links into the media and with their contacts to editors the covering. So we have to keep in mind that many years ago, the Pentagon in the United States had contracts with more than 27,000 employees responsible for public relations, with a yearly budget of more than $5 billion.
Wow.
We're talking about the Pentagon, not about the State Department, not about the White House, not about the CIA. We're talking about the Pentagon, not about the NATO or the NATO countries.
Correct.
So we have the hegemony of propaganda today. And media reporting is strongly influenced by propaganda. This is one point.
Hmm.
But we have to see the other side. The editors don't want to resist the propaganda. They know exactly that they are lying to the people willingly and knowingly. But they are following, instead of that, the propaganda narratives, because everything else would be bad for their careers. So media today in the capitalistic states are in private hands. And the shareholders and the owners of the companies are making the main decisions, the main political decisions. That means the editors have to follow the political line of their owners, of the owners of their media.
Hmm.
It's the same situation at public broadcast, a bit different because the editors in chief and the first editors have normally specific contracts that are limited to 3 or 5 years. And the controllers of those medias are making the decisions on the contracts. So, and in the controlling boards, the states and the governments have their representatives. So every responsible leading editor-in-chief has to align with the government's political narratives.
Mm.
Everything else would be bad for their careers. And let's have a glimpse into the situation of the freelancers. When you are a freelancer and you have an investigation and you're making an offer to your editor-in-chief, and the boss says, no, please go on working on this topic. And you're coming over the next day with the same topic. And the boss will say, this doesn't meet our magazine today, so I want to leave it out. And on the third day, probably you come over with the same topic, and your boss will say, oh, I would recommend please be very careful with this topic. On the fourth day, you have a clear understanding that your boss does not want this topic. And you will go and you will choose another one because you have to make money. You are paid for every minute of your film. You are paid for every line in the newspaper.
Yes.
And so you have to make money because you have to pay your rent of your apartment. And this shows um, the relationships and the situation of the employees makes it impossible to tell the truth. You're going to follow the narratives of your bosses. You have to align with the ideas of your bosses. The fourth point is the process of education of young journalists. So we talked about internships.
Hmm.
I only can say something about the German situation. And most of those internships are not paid. So you won't get any money for the internships. But you have to find a location and you have to find an apartment in very expensive cities like Hamburg, Berlin, Munich. So only a few children of poor families can manage to start a journalistic career.
Mm.
Most of those guys are coming from the upper classes, dentists, generals, managers, politicians, and so on. And those people of the upper classes are implementing in the covering the point of view of the upper classes. So specific topics doesn't play a role anymore. Homeless people doesn't play a role. Workless people doesn't play a role in covering. So those young editors are sharing the perspective of their class, and it is the upper class. And a lot of people of the upper classes have company shares.
Mm.
Company shares, possibly of the military industrial complex.
Mm.
And those shares are boosting during wars. So these young editors often may have a better return of investment during wars.
Mm.
But this is something they don't broadcast. They are telling the people, we have to help the poor Ukrainians against the bad Russians.
Right.
And that's what I mean. They are lying to the people and they know that. And the last point is the complete process of digitalization.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I observed colleagues who think watching into the internet is a possibility to find out more about reality. But the only thing you may find in the web is what somebody else uploaded,
Correct.
following his own interests. And those editors are replacing the reality with that what they find in the internet. But the internet is a filter looking like a window, nothing else. And if you want to find out something more about this war, you have to go out and watch the war. And
Mm.
then you may find, as I did, and then you may find a completely different reality, which is completely different from the media's narrative, from the propaganda narrative of the media. So that means we are getting into a time of post-factual reporting,
Mm.
which is not a reporting. And I want to point out this is a kind of lying to the people.
Mm. It's very strange indeed, and I find it to be extremely counterproductive because in the rise of AI and automation and fake videos and doctored videos, it is so easy to try to push a narrative these days. And you could easily make up something and make it look like it was. Uh, so there's a lot of fake news out there. What are your experiences traveling to the war zone, particularly in this one? And what was the main thing that you found was completely different from the media narrative that we hear?
Let me begin with my personal experience.
Yes.
But German mainstream media, also public broadcasters as well. I was denounced as a poll watcher of Mr. Putin during during the referenda on implementing the four oblasts, Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Cherson, into the Russian Federation. I was over there in,
Hmm.
in late September 2022. I was at the I was at the polling stations, all right, and I made my interviews, but I was not a poll watcher.
Hmm.
And most German media were copying that,
Hmm.
copy and paste, and they published that. So the first thing you have to understand as an editor or a freelancer or a reporter, you have to make the proof of reality.
Correct.
And the way of proving that would have been very easily.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking a phone and ringing the Russian Federation in Moscow, for example, the Foreign Office, and ask them, can you send me a list of your poll watchers? They didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
They can wait for the press release of the Foreign Office of the Russian Federation.
Mm-hmm.
They published a list of their poll watchers, and I was not on that list. It's very easy,
Mm-hmm.
and they can ring. They could have rang myself. Do you have an accreditation? And I had an accreditation. But they didn't do that. And that means they wanted to follow the propaganda line.
Mm-hmm.
They are lying to the people knowingly and willingly. That's the first problem.
Mm-hmm.
And they are lying to the people in reporting that people in the Donbas region were forced to vote by guns and soldiers and military power.
Mm-hmm.
And on the ground, I found a complete different reality.
Mm-hmm.
In strong rain, people waited in long lines at the poll stations. They all were happy for the possibility to vote. And I tried to find somebody who was more distant and critical to this organization of the voting or something else, and who was against the war. But I learned just the opposite. People told me, we want to give our vote for Russia.
Wow.
The only way to peace is on the side with Russia, because after the coup of the Maidan, the Ukrainian government in Kiev sent us soldiers and fascist militias, and they killed our children. They tortured us. They imprisoned us.
Mm.
And more than, according to international organizations, more than 14,000 people died,
Correct.
up from 2014 to 2021. And this is something that those people did not forget. They say, we were Ukrainian citizens as well. Why did they kill us? The only way to peace is with the Russian Federation. And
Mm-hmm.
one man told me, he said, Putin is a traitor. He shouldn't have come in spring 2014. Putin came too late. We
Mm.
waited for 8 years for help, but we didn't get help. So
Mm.
we have to stand up to the fascist government in Kiev, and we had to fight for our families. I met old women in their 70s who told me, when I would have been in my 50s, I would also have taken the gun.
Mm-hmm.
That's the mood in this region. And this is something which is breaking up the NATO propaganda narrative, because those people don't want to come in EU or NATO. They don't want to be a member of the European Union. But this is a region of coal and steel.
Correct.
And the competitiveness of this region, of these companies of coal and steel in this region, is not strong enough to have a good position in the European Union or in the West. But their, their competitiveness is good enough to make deals with Russia. And
Correct.
this, and this is something these people know exactly, because they say, as a member of the European Union, we all will lose our jobs. We have no future in the European Union, but we have also economically a future at the side of Russia.
Mm.
And the third point is what I heard very often. Ukraine, after the coup, is not a democracy.
Mm-hmm.
They want to imprison us while, if we speak Russian language, but this is our culture. Because those regions were given to the Ukraine Soviet Republic in 1922. Originally, those people are Russian people. And it is also democracy to have the possibility to speak your language and to live your religion and your culture.
Correct.
Democracy is not only voting every fourth year.
Correct.
It is also to have the possibility, the freedom to speak your language and to have your culture. And
Correct.
this is something I heard from everybody in this region. So the NATO narrative is completely wrong.
Absolutely.
And this is something I found out on the ground. I was very surprised.
Mm.
I was very surprised because it was a huge majority of that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I was, for that reason, denounced in Germany as
Mm.
as a friend of Mr. Putin, paid by Putin, and everything like that, because it is against the propaganda narratives.
Mm.
And that means press, media in Germany does not follow the reality anymore. They are following their own fantasies.
Correct. Absolutely. And I find it's abhorrent that we continue to support in Europe, even to this day, a neo-Nazi regime. I mean, and it's an absolute disgrace that Ukraine, even after all the accusations that Russia made that, okay, you have neo-Nazis in your architecture, you have militias which are neo-Nazis and fascistic, they have still to this day, 4 years on, haven't made an effort to get rid of those symbology, those battalions, those regiments. They haven't renamed them. They haven't made an effort to hide all this, and we still continue to support this regime. What do you think of that? I mean, as a German, what is your opinion on this topic? Because it's a very controversial topic, in my opinion. And we fought I mean, a whole world war, and we still seem to continue this behavior.
Yes, in Ukraine today, you can see swastikas everywhere.
Mm.
They are renaming streets and places in the cities after the name of Stepan Bandera, who
Correct.
was a fascist, a militant fascist.
Mm-hmm.
They are burning books of Russian literature, Dostoevsky or Tolstoy or Pushkin.
Mm-hmm.
And I told you, in the eastern part of the country, they detained people for speaking Russian language.
Correct.
And it is very clear that after the coup of the Maidan, Ukraine is run to a large part by fascists.
Mm.
And those fascists and extreme militant right extremists are controlling the security apparatus, the military, the secret services,
Mm.
um, homeland security, and all that, police. They're
Correct.
controlling that. And they created, just in the years before the Maidan, militant battalions
Mm-hmm.
to suppress their own people, especially the people in eastern Ukraine. And it is openly said by the government that those people of Russian origin are subhumans,
Correct.
subhumans, and they want to kill them or to push them out of the country.
Hmm.
That's the position. And the cooperation of EU and NATO states with militant fascists and fascist battalions in Ukraine will create a big problem for the European Union and NATO, because this problem will not stay inside Ukraine.
Hmm.
In social science, you have the word co-transformation. If some
Correct.
country is changing itself, uh, the neighboring countries will change in the same direction step by step.
Hmm.
And we will see this process because a lot of mercenaries, militant mercenaries will come back in the countries of their origins.
Hmm.
And they bring back the way of militant right-wing thinking and of right-wing action.
Hmm.
And they will bring to the other countries a new form of solving problems with violence. And this will change the political culture of Europe as a whole.
Yes, it's as they say, one, you never put all your eggs in the basket, especially if you have a rotten egg, there's a chance that all the other eggs get rotten too.
Exactly.
So, given that for the last 4 years, how do you see Russia fighting this war? Because the daily narrative, including the one from yesterday after the massive missile strike from Russia, was that they are targeting civilians. Do you see any credibility to such claims, or do you think civilian casualties, for example, in Ukraine, are mostly collateral damage, and the Russians are busy hitting targets which they think are legitimate military targets?
So I think every conflict party is captured by its own dilemma.
Hmm.
But we have to start with the situation on the ground. According to a Russian leak of the Ukraine General Staff, the number of dead and missed soldiers on the Ukraine side has
Hmm.
reached a level of 1.7 million. 1.7 million. On the Russian side, the number is much minor because the Russians have more artillery, missiles, and drones.
Correct.
So I estimate the Russian losses with 150,000 to 180,000. So after all, with I think about 50,000 dead civilians, we have 2 million dead people.
Mm.
And the war's not over yet. The war
No.
will go on. So let me start with the Russian side. In the perspective of the Kremlin and also the Russian people, this is a war of decision. It's an all-in war
Hmm.
because no superpower can accept foreign nuclear missiles directly at their borders. This is the same situation the United States had during the Cuban crisis in
Correct.
1962. And President Kennedy made very clear that he was ready to fight a nuclear war.
Hmm.
So they find a solution. So the Russians took off their missiles from Cuba, and half a year later, the Americans took off their rockets, their missiles in Turkey.
Correct.
And so the Russian side cannot stop.
Hmm.
So Ukraine is the reddest of all red lines. From the Russian point of view, peace is only possible by Russian demands, and this is a neutral Ukraine out of NATO,
Correct.
a regime change in Kiev to a more
Mhm.
Russian-friendly government, and shelter and security for the people in eastern Ukraine, which is given right now by implementing those oblasts into the Russian Federation. They won't go back to Ukraine. Never.
Mhm.
This is very clear. Uh, and everybody in Russia says these people are Russian people, these people are our brothers.
Correct.
We have to help our brothers and we won't step back. We won't get back a simple step. So
Mhm.
this is, and the Russia, originally, Russia is not an imperial power. This
Mhm.
is the largest country of the world with a relatively small population of 145 million.
Correct.
It's not enough for this huge country. So
Mhm.
they need more people, and they have everything, every mineral, everything they need in their own country. They have
Correct.
everything. There is no necessity uh, to
To
go an
invade.
imperial way. They don't want to do that.
Mhm.
There is no economic reason for that. They want to have open harbors and an access to the Mediterranean Sea, and this is the reason for controlling Crimea and Sevastopol. That's
Mhm.
very so they don't want to see the Black Sea as a domestic sea of NATO.
Correct.
That's the Russian point. The American point is more difficult. The Trump team want to stop this war because those men and women don't see a return of investment.
Yeah.
They say this is completely senseless. We cannot make money in Ukraine, not enough money. But Trump has to fight the whole security apparatus.
Correct.
And the neocons inside the security apparatus, in the CIA,
Mhm.
in the Foreign Office, in the State Department and the Pentagon, but also in his own Republican Party,
Absolutely.
like Senator Lindsey Graham and all that, a warmonger. Nothing else, a
Nothing.
warmonger related to the military-industrial complex.
Correct.
And the military-industrial complex is paying for the election campaigns of both parties,
Yes.
Democrats and Republicans. And so Mr. Trump and his team doesn't have enough power to control the whole security apparatus. So he has to align with those guys.
Mhm.
So the only way for him is he cannot stop the war. He wants
Mhm.
to send weapons, but he can Europeanize the war.
Mhm.
Oh, those European countries can fight against Russia. The main thing is they are buying their weapons in the United States. And so we can
Correct.
make billions over billions.
Yeah.
This is the American position. Normally, he would have stopped the war, but he knows not enough about this war. This war is a very complex topic. It is easy to get into a war, but it's
Correct.
much more difficult to find a way out.
Mhm.
And that's the problem. I met on the ground militias
Mhm.
in Ukraine on both sides.
Mhm.
They say, oh, the presidents want to make peace. That's a good thing.
Mhm.
But right here, I have to solve three more problems with the other side because they killed my son.
Mhm.
And the next step is I will kill their son.
Mhm.
And then we have peace right here. So,
Mhm.
which means we never will have peace.
Yeah.
It's a case of blood revenge on the ground, a case of blood revenge, and it's very difficult to find a solution for that. I think it will last 100 years. So, and the European side,
Mm-hmm.
difficult as well. The European leaders underestimated the economic and military power of the Russian Federation.
Yes.
They thought they could bring Russia on its knees by military support for Ukraine, economic pressure by sanctions, and diplomatic isolation. But every step of these three steps failed completely,
Right.
especially the sanctions. They came out as a boomerang for the European Union. And so the military aid for Ukraine and all the tanks and the weapons and the rockets and the aircrafts and all that
Mm-hmm.
cost billions over billions.
Right.
And not the Russian Federation is isolated. NATO countries are isolated
Mm-hmm.
in a global view. So the result is the European Union is, many states of the European Union are close to bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
And when the bill will come, when the check will come, and the voters will see what they have to pay in the next years. So they would kill their own politicians for their mistakes. They would kill those politicians because the state of social welfare in Germany will be completely over. The time is over.
Mm.
And the voters and the taxpayers have to pay for this war in the next years. Billions over billions. And this is
Wow.
something those politicians know. They know exactly that they brought their own countries into a dead end street.
Mm-hmm.
And they know turning around means to excuse and to say, we made a lot of mistakes. And then their careers would be over.
Mm.
Probably they would find themselves in prison. And
Oh,
they won't
wow.
do that. And for European leaders, especially for those in Berlin, Paris, and London, is the only way of survival to drive their own countries deeper and deeper into the Ukraine war. And
Mm-hmm.
this means we will find ourselves in a nuclear war in Europe in the next years. It will come. I traveled through Russia. I traveled through Russia and I saw the preparations.
Oh, wow.
They are locating new mid-range nuclear missiles. And the focus of these missiles is Germany and Poland. That's very clear.
Mm.
And according to Professor John J. Mearsheimer from Chicago University, a superpower getting under pressure will decide for the nuclear option.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm following his words. I think he's
Mm-hmm.
completely right in this point.
Mm-hmm.
And the last point is the powers in Kiev. We have
Mm-hmm.
a president who is completely corrupt.
Absolutely.
And now this was made public, which means them his masters, because the master is this guy who's giving the money, and this is the West, NATO
Mm-hmm.
countries are giving the money for Kiev. His masters want to exchange Mr. Zelensky by, for example, the Ukraine ambassador in London, Mr. Zaluzhny.
Mm-hmm.
The problem of Mr. Zaluzhny are the swastikas on his skin.
Mm-hmm.
And so these right extremists in the security apparatus in Kiev don't want peace because war is the only way of survival. They ruined their own countries. 1.7 million deaf people.
That is
And
insane.
people in Ukraine know that. People today is a military dictatorship, nothing else. And people know that. They know
It's true.
exactly what happens. The Europeans in the EU don't know what happened on the ground. But
Hmm.
Ukraine people know exactly what happened. And they will kill those leaders. And this is something Ukraine fascists know exactly. The only way of survival is war and more war, and to force the European countries into this war
Hmm.
on their side. So war will go on because the taxpayer and the voters in Western Europe, in the European Union, don't go out into the streets to protest for peace. It is not enough. We saw two peace demonstrations in fall in Berlin with about 15,000 people each. 15,000.
Hmm. That's not enough.
30,000. And this is not enough. We need 3 million people in the
Absolutely.
street. And it doesn't happen. So Germany is a country without any opposition. And
Hmm.
I can say those who are sleeping in democracy will wake up in a new war and a new dictatorship.
Wow, that is such a profound statement. I don't know if the audience heard that. If you are sleeping in your democracy, you will wake up in a war. So that is a very important point. Take part of in your democracy, especially in Europe. If you're not making your voice heard, you're walking blindly into World War III. Um, Another question for you. We have seen it's almost a suicidal behavior, huh? Because you are not caring anymore about your domestic issues. The whole thing is about Ukraine, sending them money. Whether it's Spain, I saw the other day, I think Spain wants to give another billion, and I said it's the same country that has 25% youth unemployment. I mean, how do you reconcile these two facts that you could just give out billions, but you still have a quarter of your youth population sitting unemployed taking social welfare checks? It's absolutely ridiculous. So, what do you think? So, if you believe that war with Russia is coming at a scale, how do we prevent that? Not just taking part in rallies and things like this, but how do we force our governments in Europe? Because when I see European Union, there's maybe Slovakia and what is it? The other one, Hungary, who seem to be a bit more careful, um, and say we don't want war, we don't want Ukraine in Europe and things like this. But every other country starts with the presupposition that we have to support Ukraine. So how do we change that? Because this groupthink, this constant, oh, we are all together in a virtual way, because on reality, I don't think NATO is unified. I really don't think, I don't see Greeks fighting on behalf of Turkish soldiers for NATO. I don't see a Belgian, wanting to die to fight for Ukraine or Poland, and I don't see Belgian mothers sending their sons to the front line in Poland. So, do you also believe that NATO unity or European unity is a myth? It's more, it's just a construct, because in reality, I don't see that.
So, with the military aid for Ukraine, we don't help the average Ukrainian people.
Correct.
We are sending money to the Ukrainian oligarchs.
Mm,
Spend more money with real estate in London or somewhere else. This is
mm,
all to bring our taxpayers paid billions into tax havens. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have normal people over there. And the only way to stop this process is to bring the protest into the streets. This is on the one hand. And on the other hand, you can do that by voting. And
Mm-hmm.
it's high time to send these elites to the garbage can of history by voting. And it will happen. It will
Mm-hmm.
happen. The only way to stop this process will be the implementation of martial law, for example, in Germany.
Oh, wow.
So, and this is in discussions.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
we're facing that to bring Germany into a kind of martial law.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the problem is the countries are run by a kind of kakistocracy, the
Mm-hmm.
government of the worst and silliest people. And
Yes.
so we have to end up this show.
Mm-hmm.
These people made their careers in in combination in cooperation with transatlantic institutions, foundations, and organizations like German Marshall Fund, Atlantikbrücke, Young Global Leaders, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So these people know their career would come to an end without these transatlantic organizations. And this is a process that always is starting in a very young age during studying times, invitations to conferences, grants, the possibility to make studies in the United States, paid studies, and all that. And we have to stop this process. So we need a new academic elite. But this transatlantic corrupted academic elite is now sitting in the universities and the government organized non-government organizations, in the media, in the military, in the companies. And we have to change the leading class completely. We have to
Mm.
exchange the leading class. This is a process of 20 or 25 or 30 years.
Yeah.
And I'm very unsure if we are possible to do this
Mm.
because the political elites in power want to bring us into war faster and faster, the more they get under pressure.
Mm.
The solution is war. It is the solution for their own survival. The others can die. It's not so important. Because in capitalistic states, the lives of people does not matter.
Mm.
The only thing what matters is the return of investment.
Mm.
And war brings a good return of investment.
Mm.
And you can be sure that the poor people will die at the front line and the rich people will sit in tax havens reading newspapers and drinking cocktails.
It's tragic, isn't it? I mean, the same was witnessed, happens a lot with the Kiev elite. We see them videos, social media. They're always celebrating. There seems to be parties in different parts of the world. Yet you have the humble Ukrainian soldier, who's probably fighting for the wrong reasons. Um, Mr. Baab, you have been a fantastic speak. It was really a wonderful conversation. Um, I have one last question. Do you see, if this comes to a NATO Russia warfare, do you see Russia defeating NATO, or will it just go straight to a nuclear exchange and we are both finished, or do you see more of a long conventional fight between Russia and NATO? Do you see something of that nature?
I'm very sure the Russian Federation will win this war
Mm-hmm.
because of several reasons. According to the American military analyst Andrei Madyanov,
Mm-hmm.
in military production and in creating new weapons, the Russian Federation is in front of NATO of about at least 10 years. They
Absolutely
have
true.
more modern weapons like Kinshal, hypersonic weapons, and all that.
Correct.
The second point is it is the largest country of the world. In case of a nuclear confrontation, they have Siberia, and the Europeans have nothing.
No.
And the third point is Russia is backed by Beijing, because the Chinese government does not want to see a weak state influenced by the United States in its north. They don't want that.
Correct. No.
And they need Russia as a mineral storage
Correct.
for the future. And that's the second part. So in the very beginning of the second phase of this war in 2022, I heard from Beijing, we must find an agreement. Everybody must come at the table. We have to implement the interest of every conflict party. And we don't want that you are discussing a nuclear war. Don't use those weapons and don't make a threat with those weapons. This was against Moscow, against the Russian Federation.
Mm-hmm.
Today, 3.5 years later, you don't hear such words from Beijing.
No.
There's no warning against a nuclear war anymore. That means that the leaders in Beijing are evaluating the European leaders as so crazy and so mad that they are reckoning with a nuclear war. And the position, from my point of view, the position of the Chinese today is we are ready to win a nuclear war against those mad people in Europe with that who loses the ground of reality completely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the that's the most dangerous situation in the whole history of humanity. Because I'm very clear, the United States won't help the Europeans in such a case.
No.
Europe's far away, 6,000 kilometers. They say, okay, things will go wrong in Europe, but it's all shit. It's all nuts in Europe. Let it be. So
Mm.
we are today as a European Union in a position that we are not so important as an economic power.
Mm.
The world is not interested in us anymore. We ruined ourselves. And the Indians, the Chinese, and the rest can do the math.
Yeah.
And they see in Europe there won't be a return of investment anymore. Our economies are getting weaker and weaker because we don't have the cheap Russian energy. And we
No, we don't.
cannot produce at a competitive level.
Correct.
So they say, okay, let it be. Europe is a Cape of Asia, nothing else.
Mm.
Our politicians don't want to see that, and European population does not want to see that. This is the real danger. We are not important. A nuclear war in Europe is like, for example, a Vietnam War. It is, well, a war in a country far away, and people not really necessary are dying.
Mm.
What's up with those Europeans?
Yeah.
Well, this is the point. This is the fuck the Europeans. They made
Yeah,
a
it's
lot of mistakes in their imperial history of 500 years, and now the show is over. Okay,
okay.
so sometimes we have to say goodbye, and that's all. And
It's
that's the situation. The Indians calculate this very exactly, and the Chinese as well, and the government of Indonesia. They know exactly these things,
mm,
and they are shaking their heads about the Europeans, and they are saying, okay, the white race is completely degenerated. They are silly. They are producing at their universities completely illiterate academics who are who are mostly
uh,
focused on gender studies but not on
absolutely
economy.
insane.
And these people in Europe are completely useless. And if they don't want to help themselves, they can go. It's just a glimpse of history, and we have to go on and to plan our future. And
Oh,
this position is completely right.
it's
I cannot say bad words about that. It's completely right. The idiots are in Europe.
yes.
And this is not the end of history. It's only like the decline of the Empire of Rome. And now the
Mm,
Western Empire is in its decline. And they don't want to accept that. The European leaders cannot cope with that. They are trying to save themselves with more and more war. We are getting into, without a nuclear war, we would get in a new century of wars.
mm.
Um, uh, and these wars will be American wars and European wars, not Indian or Chinese wars.
No.
So, because those countries in the southern hemisphere, they need development, education for the children, food for their people, homes for their people. Connectivity is a problem. They need development.
Mhm.
And so they don't want to be bothered by degenerated Europeans.
I love the way you just put it. That was a banger for an amazing answer. Thank you, sir. Just a reminder, huh, it is a very chaotic world, especially in Europe. I understand it's getting very close, and nothing has changed yet. We can still fight. So if you're a European, I'm an Indian. I've been in Europe for 25 years. So I've seen the
Yes.
European Union evolve into the kind of mess it is today. It didn't start out that way.
When the war will
Uh,
begin, I will knock at your door in India and ask for a bed and breakfast.
I will make sure we have a lot of land in India, so we'll make sure that we have a shelter. But all jokes aside, I hope we never come to a war with Russia, at least NATO. I don't see yet the chance because I think the more reasonable ones are the Russians, especially between how things are handled. And I think there are hard suffering, regardless of the kind of red lines we keep pushing on them. They seem to be able to take the beating. They respond towards Ukraine, not towards NATO. I really hope we don't do something really stupid to change that perspective. Um, that said, sir, it was really a wonderful pleasure to talk to you. I hope we can talk again in a few weeks or a couple of months, and we continue to evolve the situation. But thank you so much, Mr. Babb. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I
The
hope
pleasure
our
is on my
audience,
side. The pleasure is absolutely on my side. And thank you
well,
very much for joining me, for having me here. And
yes,
see you next time.
thank you, sir. I wish you a lovely day. Thank you, Mr. Babb. Bye bye. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.